Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. Welcome to this week's legislative live stream. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Please like, share, comment. We have so much fun stuff to talk to you about tonight. My name is Brandon Work with Free State, Colorado. And then we got Michael Vance. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Brandon. It's another week that we get to enjoy the greatness of Colorado. So how about yourself, man?
Oh my gosh, this weather's been amazing. It's been a really great weekend. Really good times all around. This legislative session has been absolutely crazy. It's been wild this last week at the state legislature. I made it down there on Friday, which was nice. And then, yeah, this coming week we have so much to talk about. There's so much happening, folks. We're in the thick of it, and it's so fascinating to watch it all play out in real time. What's happening this year? But yeah, Michael, how have you been doing?
I've been doing good, trying to enjoy the weather as much as I can. Trying to get out. Took my dogs on a couple walks this week, and it was pretty fantastic to just get out and enjoy Colorado. It's typically not this warm. It gets a little too hot at times, but at the same time, we got to be grateful for the weather that we have been given. It could be much worse this time of year. We could all be stuck in 2 foot of snow. So I'm grateful for what we are receiving right now.
We just got to enjoy every day, look at the positive, and there's so much opportunity, to enjoy this weather and to get involved with the legislature, get involved with Colorado politics, and have a voice. And that's ultimately why we do this, folks. So thank you for joining us tonight. We want to help empower you, educate you, give you the information you need to be a leader for liberty here in Colorado. We need more and more people stepping up, and we're seeing it. But this next 2 hours, we're going to go through some of the legislation being heard at the Capitol this week, give you some in-depth analysis, really let you know the important bills that you can testify on, and then additionally cover some of the other big bills that are going through this legislature this session, but aren't necessarily being heard this week. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But you ready to get started, Michael?
Absolutely.
All right, perfect. Let's pull up the slideshow here, and folks, it is the we just had our spring equinox, so it's a equinox theme there. You can kind of see the globe there on the slide there, equal distance, equal night and equal day. So we are at that point of the year where the days are getting longer than the nights, so that's always a nice turning point. It's definitely feeling like summer out there, and yeah, we're getting there, and we're halfway through the legislative session as well, so that's pretty exciting. And folks, there have been 537 bills, memorials, and resolutions introduced. How is it even possible that 100 legislators can really accurately understand 500 different items, read through it, understand the implications, the big picture, the nuance, the details? It's impossible, folks. It's so impossible for them to know the outcomes of the legislation they're passing. But we want to give you as much insight as we can in these next couple hours. Any other opening thoughts here, Michael?
Uh, Not too many. I love the comment from Brooke, Brandon for governor. Let's get on it. Let's add another name to the race, Brandon.
That's hilarious. Awesome, awesome, folks. Seen a lot of great people in the chat here. Please like and share, leave a comment in the chat. So, folks, tonight we're going to talk about some news from this last week. We want to give you an update on some of the important legislation we called out last week and some of the big key votes that we saw at the state legislature. Then around 7:30, we'll be talking about some of the big bills being heard this week in committee hearings. So this is really your key point to know what's happening and how you can have an impact, how you can have a voice. And then about 8:30-ish, somewhere around there, we'll be talking about on updates on the year's biggest bills, so bills that aren't being heard this week, but we just want to keep you updated. And we'll go over some of the most important bills that have actually already failed at the legislature as well. So you can say, oh yeah, whatever happened to that bill? Oh yeah, it didn't make it. It got postponed indefinitely. So we're going to give you the updated information, everything updated today. And yeah, lots of fun stuff. A Fly Pilot Explorer in the chat's asking what's the record number of bills introduced in a session. I don't know. I remember Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year, or the year before was probably the record from what I heard, which was over 700. What do you think? What do you remember, Michael, on that?
Yeah, I believe it was about 731 last year, 734, something like that. It was an absolutely astronomical amount of bills that were introduced in a 120-day session. Way too many for Colorado's good. I can tell you that much.
Fair point. Yeah, 100%. 100%. We're going to have some recording here tonight to get some clips up for the social media this week. So, folks, these are some of the most important bills being heard this week. Of course, they're all bad bills, which is why it says oppose. From a pro liberty perspective, we oppose these bills and want to inform you about them. So, if you can't stick around for the whole night here, folks, take a screenshot right now. These are some of the most important bills being heard in committee hearings this week. Really bad things. We're going to spend a lot more time this evening getting into detail on these, so we won't talk about them now, but just wanted to quickly present this for people who can't stick around. These are really some of the most important pieces of legislation. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on, Michael?
No, I think it's great. There's a lot of terrible bills this week, and yeah, we just yeah we need. I think it's important to just hop right into it. I know usually we have a guest on, but this week these bills are so important that we just can't really afford to have another guest on. We're already spending 2+ hours a week on legislative session content. So yeah, I appreciate everybody who does stick around every single week. Listening to us for 2+ hours, almost 3 hours sometimes. So thank you, everyone.
Perfect. So let's jump into it here and cover what happened this last week. So, some of the most important things we talked about on last week's live stream, we want to just give you some updates, kind of let you know what happened here. So, these are the bills we called out last week, the important things. So, of course, Senate Bill 43, the firearm barrel registration and restriction bill, absolutely horrible. Unfortunately, it did pass the House and it had already passed the Senate. So, it's going to be going on its way to the governor's desk, unfortunately, there, folks. So if you have a personal contact with Jared Polis, tell him to veto Senate Bill 43. That is a horrible bill. And then last week we also heard two really scary, actually, I would say, even social media bills. 1255, which is the social media duty to report, requiring social media platforms to look for illegal activity and report it to the authorities, automatically report to the police if they see something suspicious or that somebody has flagged on. And that might seem good on its face, folks, but you have to remember here in Colorado, as we already mentioned, we're getting 700 plus new laws a year, something along those lines. All these ridiculous things like the firearm barrel law. So that goes into effect. Somebody's posting online about circumventing it, which is an unconstitutional bill in my mind, an unconstitutional law. If you're posting online about circumventing an unconstitutional law, you could potentially be reported to law enforcement under House Bill 1255. It did pass out of committee. There's still some opportunity to oppose it, and we got to get more attention on that one for sure. Then we also had House Bill 1148, the protections for youth on social media, Yarazoki's bill to create a 5% tax on every single video game transaction, in-game transactions. That was heard for debate. They did lay over the bill for action, so I think there's some amendments, some things that they might change with it, but still a really bad bill. Then this last week, the best bill of the week was Senate Bill 111 to increase penalties for criminals who are convicted of hurting children in the most horrific ways. And unfortunately, that bill did fail. It did not pass out of committee, and it's getting a lot of attention, which we're going to go into. Any other thoughts on these, Michael, before we move on?
I mean, I'm really glad to see that there's a lot of national attention given to Senate Bill 111, especially since people like Senator Nick Hendrickson out of Senate District 3, um, is is one of the main factors in both Senate Bill 11 getting killed as well as Senate Bill 97 being proposed, as he was the prime sponsor to legalize prostitution. So, remember they said criminalized, but the act itself was going to be legalized through this bill. So I really like to see that happening. One of the few good um, good trends in Colorado is seeing a leftist shift away from Pueblo. And by that, I mean, we're seeing a rightward swing within the Pueblo area, especially in the last few elections. So I'm very happy to see the progress going on in Colorado, and we very well could see a seat flip in Senate District 3. Nick Hendrickson had the opportunity to run again and he declined, and I think it's because he knows that he would lose his seat if he were to rerun. So we just have to remember that the Democrat replacement is going to be another term of Nick Hendrickson in Senate District 3. So we need to give people like Dana Charles all the support we can.
Perfect. So that Perfect. Yeah. So this last week, folks, we had some horrible bills pass, and I do have a lot of clips here from the X account for Free State Colorado. Definitely follow Free State Colorado throughout the week. I'll try and keep you updated about what's going on in the legislature as much as I can. But we did have some horrible bills pass on third reading. So when you see that screen, like is currently displayed, where it shows the names and the ayes and the noes and the excused, those are third reading votes in the House. So that's when it's passing out of the House and going into the Senate. That's the really the only time it's recorded in the entire House floor. That aside from a few other ways to do it, but generally speaking, this is how we hold politicians accountable. So when they run for reelection, we say, okay, House Bill 1203, how did they vote on that? And this bill basically overrides local control of counties with regard to how they elect their county commissioners. That bad bill did pass. And then, of course, Senate Bill 32. This basically is a big pharma bill, if you ask me. And I'm going to go into that more probably at a future time because that bill did pass and is going on its way to the governor. So we'll see what happens there. But Senate Bill 32 also passed out of the Senate or out of the House this last week, and it already passed out of the Senate. Any thoughts on these, Michael?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see some of these bills pass. This is now the opportunity on a bill, especially like Senate Bill 32, to reach out to the governor's office. If you think there's any chance that we could possibly see some pushback from the governor's office, this is the opportunity to make your voice heard. So that way, um, there are certain times where the governor might not say anything, or the governor will do the right thing and vote and veto a bad bill. So make your voice heard, because if you do have the opportunity to sway, that would be the best bet by calling the governor's office or sending an email to the governor's office and letting them know, just giving them your thoughts, because there might be something, just like with legislators, there might be something they might not have thought about. And if you can kill this bill by giving them a new perspective, please do, because I know it doesn't always seem like the situation might seem bleak from time to time, but there isn't hope if you don't actually take the shot. And you never know whose mind you're going to change.
Fair point too. And I just want to point out for people for on this House Bill 1203, they only passed it with 34 votes. They only passed it, so basically 34 yeses, 28 nos, three excused. If those excused potentially had shown up and had voted against it, because they probably would have, it would have been 34 to 31. So folks, things aren't that hopeless ultimately for some of these bills that are passing by just a couple votes. Because even a lot of the Democrats in the House were like, hey, my own district doesn't like this bill. My local counties might not like this bill. And so, I mean, really, folks, this is 2026, a big election year, and flip a couple seats here and there, like Michael was talking about with Pueblo or anywhere else in the state, and all of a sudden, a bad bill could stop just because of three seats. So that's a message of hope here. Things really aren't as bad. Sometimes they are. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes they're not as bad as we would think otherwise. I also wanted to point this out here. There was another bill being heard this week. There was actually two bills back to back. And by that, I mean, one was, I think, on Tuesday, one was on Wednesday. But to put new taxes on beer, cider, and wine. And it was so interesting because we would think, right, like people watching this and myself, you're like, oh, yeah, well, the Democrats have the majority. They're going to pass everything they can to raise taxes. But folks, I listened to that committee hearing on 1271, and there were so many breweries and cideries and wineries and distilleries and trade groups that came out and showed up and said, like, you're going to put us out of business. Like, our business is struggling here in Colorado already as a craft brewer, and this could be the final nail in the coffin. And it worked. I mean, ultimately, the legislators, the House members in this committee responded to that, and I'm sure a lot of those discussions were happening outside of committee as well, which is why it's important to reach out to the legislators, especially if you're going to be affected by these bills, especially if you employ people and you might not be able to employ them anymore if these bills pass. But it was enough. This bill failed on a 5-8 vote. House Bill 1271 would have devastated Colorado's brewing, spirits, and wine industry. It was great to watch. It was great to see so many people show up. And that was so interesting, folks. Really interesting to see the outcry from the community show up and actually stop a bad bill, stop a tax increase. That's a sign of positivity here, folks, that things aren't entirely lost, especially when there's a good perspective there. And then also, unfortunately, we did have House Bill 1276, the Protect Safety of Individuals Who Are Immigrants, and such an Orwellian title, of course, right? Like you would think that it's like, oh yeah, that sounds good. But no, this bill did a lot of bad things to double down on Colorado's sanctuary state status for illegal aliens. And that narrowly passed on a 6-5 vote. So again, folks, we're seeing a lot of close votes out here, 6-5 votes. So we flip one seat this year, two seats this year, three seats this year, and some of these bills can stop. So very interesting stuff here. Immigration bill, a tax bill, both failed on March 17th this last week, on this last Tuesday. Michael, any thoughts on these?
Yeah, especially with 1276, now is the time if you have the opportunity to make contact with the legislator, uh, now's the time because this is a fantastic opportunity to provide a bunch of amendments because we know that the Democrats are going to try to push this bill through just as much as they possibly can intact. If they were going to add a bunch of amendments, they would have already done that, and that would have been worked out a lot of times through the governor's office, and they do that through the amendment phase. Now is the opportunity to reach out to your especially Republicans and ask them and provide them with amendments. Uh, for example, if you can think of 1276, if you want to have them carve out a special amendment to make sure that violent criminals or individuals who have been charged with violent crimes are excluded from the passage from the effects of 1276. That would be a fantastic opportunity to let your legislator know that to let these legislators know that you have an amendment to propose because if they were to not push that through, let's say for example a violent crime amendment were to be rejected, you're going to have that on record that the Democrats do not care about keeping violent criminals off the streets of Colorado. Um, this is a so if you The other thing that does is it allows the Republican legislators to find new ways to eat up certain bits and pieces of time down at the legislature because remember they're trying to shove as many bills down our throats as humanly possible. So if we do have the opportunity to help the legislators eat up as much time as humanly possible, that's going to help protect Colorado from some of these nasty bills, especially as we run up against the clock of CNADA and they've had to eat all this time on these other bills. They're not going to have as much time to get everything on their legislative agenda accomplished for this legislative session. So that's one of the best ways that we can fight down at the legislature, especially during second reading, is by providing opportunities for our legislators to um, add new amendments and make bills better. Because because at the end of the day, remember we're in election season. They see their vote against a very good amendment hit them at the ballot box, that's going to be critical to turning Colorado around.
Definitely agree with you, Michael. So much of the importance of what happens in the legislature in an election year is how it can be used against or for legislators come this election, right? It's like they have a record, they can be held accountable, and the voters can be made aware. And that's why it's so important that we do this every week, is part of the reason, for sure. Now, another interesting aspect, also on March 17th here, we had a couple other bills. It was a really busy day this last week. House Bill 1275 fails in the House Judiciary Committee. 5-6 to stop this bad bill. It would have pitted local law enforcement against ICE agents, basically leading to armed confrontation. That committee hearing was really interesting to listen to. And law enforcement officers were like, if you're telling us we have to arrest ICE agents if they're wearing a mask, if they're doing something that you deem inappropriate, Colorado legislature, then you're putting our police officers in a horrible situation that none of them want to be in. So that bill failed. That bill failed. We had, Cecilia Espinoza, Chad Clifford, two people who generally are more on the more pro law enforcement side on the Democrat caucus, vote against this bill. It was very interesting to see. House Judiciary Committee. I mean, it was like hours and hours, folks, of testimony. But one of the worst pro illegal alien bills in the legislature this year failed in committee, making headlines, national headlines, and this bill failed. So, folks, don't get so hopeless in terms of the what changes here in Colorado. There's a lot of good things we can look at. Another one that was bad, I thought, was Senate Bill 131. It did narrowly pass out of the Senate Finance Committee on a 5-4 vote, and this is going to create new restrictions and regulations around sports betting. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand there's a lot of problems with people getting addicted to sports betting and going into debt and destroying their lives over this. But the voters overwhelmingly support it. The voters approved it at the ballot measure, at the ballot box as an initiative, as a statewide measure, and the people like it, and people want to do it, and they support it, and the legislature shouldn't be touching it that way. In my mind, we shouldn't be trying to restrict an industry that's it's really not necessary to. So. It was a bad bill, Senate Bill 131, but narrowly passed out of the committee this last week in the Senate Finance Committee. Any thoughts on these two bills, Michael?
I'm glad to see 1275 fail. 1275 and 1276, which we just talked about, were both presented to get presented one after another in the same committee this week. So I was hoping that if 1275 failed, we could also see 1276 fail. Unfortunately, it didn't. And then with 131 passing as well, that was disappointing to see because one thing to remember with this bill is this was a voter approved legislation. Now they are and the voters of Colorado not too long ago, just a few years ago, said this is something we want in our state. And then the Colorado Democrats are turning around saying, no, we don't care what you have to say. We're gonna impose certain mandates that you never agreed to on um, on this industry that you said you wanted. So very concerning to see. The party of democracy is once again going against the will of the people of Colorado.
Also, this last week, and well said, Michael, completely agree with you there. Also, this last week, as I alluded to, this was on Wednesday, March 18th of this last week, House Bill 1301. We talked about this last week, would have asked voters for new taxes on alcohol and marijuana, and it failed. In the same committee, the day after the next, big government Bob Marshall failed. Big government Bob Marshall strikes out, is what I had said. The vote was 6-5. And basically, these legislators who are saying, listen, you're going to put businesses in my community, like you're going to put employers out. They're gonna shut down because of House Bill 1301, these new taxes on alcohol and marijuana. Enough's enough. And it was so interesting to listen to that committee because these legislators were like, well, where are we going to get the money from? We want to invest in mental health funding. So where's this money going to come from them? And that was like their question. They kept asking. It's like, well, listen, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Like you can't just be taxing every little thing in Colorado. That's why businesses are closing, for heaven's sakes. And then also on Wednesday, March 18th, this last week, on a 3-4 vote, Democrats in the Colorado Senate voted against jailing criminals convicted of the worst possible crimes against children. You had Democrat Senators Ben Benitez, Henriksen, Wallace, and Weissman vote against Senate Bill 111, the mandatory jail time bill for these child predators. And yeah, we had one Democrat senator, Dylan Roberts, join the other two Republicans. So there was 3-4. But again, folks, it shows you some of these bills are passing on one vote or getting stopped by one vote. So it does make a difference. We can't change the entire state overnight, but flipping one Senate seat, flipping one House seat, ensuring that that one good House legislator stays in there this next election cycle, folks, we can all do our part that makes an actual tangible difference in terms of the direction of our state. But I got to point out, you had Democrat Senator Adrian Benvenidez, who just was appointed in a vacancy committee, being the deciding vote to stop Senate Bill 111. She was elected by 20 people, 20 Democrats, Democratic Party insiders in a vacancy committee in basically a closed door meeting, for lack of a better word, out there away from the will of the voters. And she gets appointed and then votes, yep, we're going to stop this bill to hold child predators accountable. And it's like that just shows that in and of itself, folks, like that whole scenario of like a vacancy appointment senator getting 20 votes, serving on a committee, being the deciding vote to against mandatory jail time for these horrible criminals. It's just like the perfect encapsulation of what's happening here in Colorado and so much of the problems we have with our state legislature. But that's why we do these live streams, to get this information out there. Michael, what do you think about these ones?
I'm really glad you brought up Benavidez because Benavidez, as an appointed legislator, it, with the new laws that have come about in Colorado, she actually is going to see a special election. Fred Alfred Jr., who was running in HD 32, dropped out of that race and went over to the Senate District 21 special election race to actually challenge Benavidez, who won, as you said, by only 20 votes. It's absolutely ridiculous that she is bringing such an extremist policy to that Senate district. So I'm really hoping that we can see positive results in 2026, not only in Senate District 21, but also with big government Bob Marshall. He's also running in a swing district. He's got a record of harming people, especially when it comes to affordability. So very, very concerning that he's still in the legislature, especially with his record of being a bit of a loose cannon and having with his hot temper. For example, if you want to look up something interesting, look up Bob Marshall Confederate flag, the very top search result you'll see is him waving around a Confederate flag in Highlands Ranch. And I don't think that is something that best represents Highlands Ranch. So please, let these people know in these individual House districts and Senate districts that these people, that Benavidez and Bob Marshall are not fit to represent those districts.
Well said, sir. 100% agree with you there. And then also this last week, oh, there's the Libs of TikTok picked that up. 1.2 million views as of earlier today. 1.2 million views. Sorry, it's so small there, folks, but Libs of TikTok on X got 1.2 million views. And there's the picture there of the four Democrats in the Katie Wallace, also a vacancy appointment. Adrian Benvenidez, also a vacancy appointment. And then Nick Henriksen, who sponsored the prostitution bill, who's out this year. And then Weissman, who's been in there, gosh, for almost a decade, I think, because he was in the House and now he's in the Senate. So that guy's been an institutional Democratic player, always supporting the far left policies. But that's what they did. Four Colorado Democrats just blocked Senate Bill 111 there, which would have required jail time for child people who are children there. Name and shame them for sure. And then also, folks, this was on the 19th. This Thursday, we're kind of going through last week. We had our good friend and former guest on the live stream here, Catching Valentinus, the director of operations at Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, get thrown out by the sergeant at arms in the House lobby there at the state capitol for asking him about his bill to freeze gun sales in Colorado. Now, we're going to get into that bill. We're going to spend a good amount of time on it, so we won't now. But I'm definitely going to be talking to Catching to get more of the story there. If you haven't seen that, go on Rocky Mountain Gun Owners on their X and Facebook accounts tonight after the live stream here and look at the video they put out. Look at what they show. This Hartsook guy, he's a Republican, but he's as bad as a Democrat. If you guys have been a long time watchers since last year or before, you know that Hartsook's one of the worst Republicans we have serving in our state government. And we actually had him on the live stream last year, and he was trying to explain himself, but he just has his name all over some of the worst bills, and we're going to get into one tonight. But Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, the best thing about them, I'll say, they don't care if it's a Republican, they don't care if it's a Democrat, they don't care who it is. If you support bad legislation that's bad for Colorado's gun owners, they will come after you and they will call you out and they will name you, they will shame you, they will do everything they can. They don't care what party you are. Unfortunately, we have other gun rights activists here in Colorado who will not go after Republicans. They'll just say, oh no, the Republicans aren't the problem, even when they sponsor bad bills. So RMGO is unique in that way, and they get a lot of hate for it. Honestly, they get a lot of people coming after them because they attack Republicans. But hey, it's about policy, it's about the principle, it's not about the person. A politician is just elected to serve the people and protect our rights. If they're not doing that, doesn't matter what party they are, they deserve to be called out, just like Rep Hartsook. Michael, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, one thing I'll say, we've already talked about Senate Bill 111 quite a bit. Uh, just with this specific, screenshot, there was a typo. They meant to say, Libs of TikTok did mean to say Senate Bill 26-111. And they did mention that afterwards down in the reply section of the tweet that they actually made a typo, which is no big deal, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows we were talking about Senate Bill 111, and Libs of TikTok intended to reference Senate Bill 111 as well. When it comes to what happened with Catching, I thought it was absolutely inexcusable. We should not have people like Anthony Hartsook representing Senate districts, regardless of party, who are going to use petty attacks to strip people of their ability to speak down in the Capitol and petition the government. Catching is a representative. He was down there doing his lobbyist work on behalf of gun owners all over Colorado, and he was simply asking a question. You guys, we've interviewed Catching. What you saw from Catching, he is a very soft. I don't want to say soft spoken, but he's a very, I'll say, reserved and how do I say this? He's a very reserved individual who does whatever he can to um, be patient and respond the right way. He wants to make sure that the words that he speaks are the right words coming out of his mouth and doing it the right way. And I would say he's very wise. He's not the oldest guy in the world. He just graduated a few years ago, but I would say he's very mature for somebody of his age and his caliber doing the job he's doing. And I say all that just to say the attacks that were laid by Rep Hartsook during during that little confrontation were not accurate at all. I know that there was a second accusation laid by Senator Frizzell, which is extremely unfortunate yesterday, where she attempted to call the police on catching. Very, very concerning stuff. I wish that, how do I want to say this? I just wish that uh, people were being honest, and it's extremely disappointing to see Republicans act in this way, especially elected officials who are Republicans. And I'm happy to see a primary challenger for Rep. Hartsook. And hopefully, we see something similar for Senator Frizzell, because these are not actions becoming of general of elected officials in Colorado.
Well said, sir. Well said. Completely agree. And then, folks, this is here on Friday, March 20th. It was a marathon session down at the state capitol in the House, where House Republicans were fighting to protect our Second Amendment rights against a couple of anti-gun bills. And unfortunately, we had them pass. So House Bill 1126, which was mentioned here in the chat a little bit ago by somebody who's going to go out of business. The Democrat legislature is going to put them out of business, and lots of people across the state with all these requirements for firearms dealers. It's inexcusable completely. 34 votes, yes. 28, no. So I mean, you got to think that's pretty close as well, regarding that. And then you had Senate Bill 4, which is on its way to the governor's desk right now, to expand red flag gun confiscation here in Colorado. Really bad bill. 39 voted for it, 24 voted against it. So it's interesting. You do see some Democrats vote against these bills. I mean, it's got to be pointed out because, I get it. Don't get me wrong. I want to see Republicans pick up seats, but at the same time, we have to know the reality of what we're dealing with. So there are Democrat legislators, excuse me, who voted against these bills. There's only 22 Republicans in the House, and you had 24 no votes on Senate Bill 4, and on House Bill 1126, you had 28 no votes. So I mean, you had six Democrats join Republicans. I see, I'm even having trouble saying it, but that's the reality. Had six Democrats join Republicans to vote against that bill. So you got to really understand that there is just a couple seats could make a huge difference. Imagine what kind of message that would send, and then just flipping a couple votes could stop some of the worst of the worst. I mean, when Colorado's assault weapons bill ban, gun ban, it stopped 2 years in a row, and because Democrats killed the bill. Unfortunately, it did pass last year, Senate Bill 3, but nonetheless, it just shows that it's not as bleak as people might think it is, and that's one of the big messages I really want people to understand. So, any thoughts about these ones, Michael?
Yeah, I think it's extremely concerning for Colorado. These bills are going to make it a more dangerous place for Coloradans to live. If you guys haven't seen it, go look at the Colorado House Republicans social media. Rep. Liminell had a very, very touching and concerning post about what's going on in Colorado, excuse me, what these bills are going to do, particularly Senate Bill 4, yeah, Senate Bill 4 is what it was. Um, Basically she went on to talk about her mom's death and how that affected her, and how basically if Senate Bill 4 were in existence back then, she would have lost her gun rights because of the thoughts that she was feeling. She needed to go talk to somebody. She went to see therapy, and some of the questions, I mean, she just lost her mom. I mean, she would have answered yes to some of these questions. For example, she's depressed. I mean, who wouldn't be depressed after losing one of your parental figures in your life? So very, very concerning stuff with what's going to happen with Senate Bill 3. That's going to result in individuals no longer being willing to seek help that they might actually need, which is going to turn into deepening and worsening mental health issues in Colorado. And that's going to lead to more people likely doing something violent. So that's going to be the worst case scenario. And we're going to see more of that in Colorado because of bills like Senate Bill 4, and then we're going to have less options because 1126 is going to absolutely destroy uh, it's going to absolutely destroy the gun industry because if this thing passes through the Senate, then we're going to see less and less individuals. We're going to see less and less gun stores, which is going to lead to less volume. It's going to lead to less supply, and we're going to see higher demand. So it's also going to lead to less affordability of guns inside Colorado. So very, very concerning stuff.
Definitely concerning, folks. So that's kind of some of the highlights from this last week, and then we're going to talk about some of the bills being heard at committee hearings this week, folks. So, committee hearings, that's where you can do a Zoom testimony, you can show up in person, you can reach out to the committee members, because we saw this, folks, this last week. Some of these bills passed by one vote, some of these bills failed by one vote, and maybe that's people in the community who are going to be affected by this, saying, "Hey, I'm in your district, Mr. or Mrs. Legislator, and this is going to have a negative effect on me or a positive effect," and that might sway them. It really does matter, folks, when you see some of this stuff happen. So definitely show up, get involved, sign up to speak at committee hearings. It does make a difference. It does matter. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when you hear people say, "Oh, it doesn't matter at all." It does. Don't get me wrong. There's limitations on that. Obviously, it's not like if somebody's in one impassioned speech can change the whole direction. But there's certain benefits or certain aspects that matter. So definitely, here we go, folks. You ready, Michael, to jump into some of the bills being heard this week in committee?
Absolutely. Let's get into it, Brandon.
Perfect, folks. So this Monday, March 23rd, in the House Finance Committee, there's two very interesting bills, absolutely horrible bills that are going to increase taxes on people here in Colorado, put people out of work, hurt employers, and generally hurt our economy. So this is Monday, March 23rd, 1:30 p.m. in House Committee Room 112. There's four bills being heard total, but we really want to talk about two bills. We're not going to go over every single bill being heard in the legislature this week, of course. We wouldn't have time. But House Bill 1289, gosh, what a good little exercise here to see Lorena Garcia, the card carrying communist there, they, them, Kyle Brown, and Mike Weissman. So this is like the bad idea factory. That's these three stooges basically there in the state legislature. So House Bill 1289 to modify certain tax expenditures. Look at this bill summary, folks. There's so many red flags here, right? Not just who are the bill sponsors, but look at, there's how many sections? There's 39 sections in this bill. This is insane, folks. They are going for the whole enchilada here to try and raise taxes. It's a 70-page bill, for heaven's sakes, folks, 70 pages long. The fiscal note is always a good place to look to see what it's going to actually do to our money, to our wallets. And let's zoom in here a little bit, folks. You can see in this current year, $2.5 million being taken out of our economy and going to the state government. And then look at, or that's okay, that's negative, but nonetheless, look at budget year 2026 to 2027, $89 million more in state revenue. 27 to 28, $159 million more in state revenue. This is totally a government scam to steal more money from hardworking Coloradans. This is a horrible bill, House Bill 1289. There's so much to it, folks. They want to take so much millions and millions of dollars out of our economy. This bill makes various changes to tax policy. These are grouped by the type of tax in the descriptions below. Income tax, repeals certain tax deductions allowed in current state law. And if these legislators were really adhering to the spirit of Tabor, they would have to ask the voters. I mean, don't get me wrong, the courts wouldn't agree to that, that's a requirement. It should be requiring new state income tax additions to offset certain federal deductions. So while the federal government under Republican leadership has cut your taxes, here in Colorado, they're saying, no, 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 us greedy Democrat legislators want your more of that money. Just because the feds are giving you a tax cut, you here locally have to still pay those taxes to our state government. There are so many things here, folks. We can't go through it all tonight, but you can see wage and salaries deduction, state income addition for federally deducted capital gains invested in opportunity funds, corporate income tax modifications, changes to income tax credits, new tax credits, senior assistance credit. So they're going to use this money take it from some and give it to others, of course. Geothermal energy tax credit. So much of what they're trying to do to manipulate our government, manipulate our economy, support the industries they want, and tax everybody else. But I got to say, one of the biggest things here, folks, is what it does to precious metals. Now, this is a 30-page fiscal note. So it's a long time there. I'm going to use a little cheat sheet, do the control F to find it. Here it is, folks. Repealed exemptions, coins and precious metal bullion exemption, effective January 1st, 2027. The bill repeals the sales and use tax exemption for precious metals, bullion, and coins. So right now in Colorado, you do not pay taxes on precious metal, bullion, and coins. They're treated basically like money. This bill, if it goes through, would say, nope, sorry, you're buying gold and silver, you have to pay taxes on it. precious metal bullion, bad stuff, folks. That people are just going to keep going out of state. Of course, big money. It's going to put little mom and pop jewelry stores or jewelry brokers or coin brokers or whoever it is out of business for sure. But this is such a massive bill, folks. This should not be allowed at all to have a 70-page bill with a 30-page fiscal note, repealing so much changes to tax policy. Just moving money around according to the whims of these legislators is just absolutely and utterly horrible. But of course, the precious metal bullion coin, they're like, oh, that's a loophole, is what the Democrats are saying. No, folks, it's insane. This is a horrible bill, one of the worst we've seen, and I really hope a lot of people show up to testify against this bill. House Bill 1289 being heard in the House Finance Committee on Monday, March 23rd at 1:30 p.m. What are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
I think that this one violates not only does this violate the single subject rule, um, and the only way they're trying to quote unquote get around it is because they're saying this is a bill that's going to clean up tax loopholes. And so they're going to try to get around it that way. And they likely will get around it because let's be honest, Democrats are going to help out the Democrats on a bill like this. The other thing I'm concerned about is a bill like this that's going to bring in over $100 million in the next 5 years. I mean, you can see it's they're planning on bringing in 150 million dollars in the in the third year in the fiscal year of 2027 2028. That right there, with that 1 year, that should tell you everything you need to know, and that they are going to try to work around Tabor because a bill that's going to bring in $100 million in the first 5 years needs to be a Tabor ballot, and we're not going to see any sort of bill like this approving. We're not going to see this bill on the ballot in 2026 or 2027. So I'm extremely concerned that they are playing a lot of games that's going to prevent us from being able to actually vote on this, even if this bill passes. So we need to get this bill on the ballot if we possibly can. If we can't, at least kill the bill inside the committee hearing.
Yeah, and folks, and a lot of it is so much of what we do at the legislature is really try and get the word out there, get these legislators on record, like we were talking about earlier, but really make sure the people of Colorado know just how horrible these politicians are, right? I think that's a key point we want to always make. Horrible, horrible bill, folks. That's House Bill 1289. And then, of course, there's another bill here that, of course, improved funding to support development. It's just one of those things. It's like, okay, improved funding. This is in that same committee hearing, House Bill 1206, Junie Joseph and William Lindstedt. But basically, here you can read through the whole bill summary here, another pretty big bill. But you can basically say that, yeah, it's going to be new taxes. This bill allows city and county housing authorities to levy sales and use taxes and property taxes with voter approval, thanks to Tabor, fight for Tabor. County housing authorities to issue bonds in urban renewal areas to enter into shortfall guarantee contracts with project developers. So I don't like the idea of them issuing bonds, going into debt. But nonetheless, of course, the idea here, folks, is that they want to say, yeah, let's give the city and county housing authorities to just raise taxes on people up to 1% of, or a property tax up to 5 mils with voter approval. So that's lots of money that can go into local governments that they can then use to basically build these affordable housing projects, urban renewal projects, all these types of things. So bad bill for sure. Of course, thankfully, we have Tabor, our taxpayers' Bill of Rights here in Colorado. So this does have to go to the voters if approved. But nonetheless, it's important that we get the word out now, let people know what's happening, and fight back because this is terrible for them to try and raise taxes, especially at this time, folks. Property taxes already, or people are struggling to keep up with. Sales taxes, people are struggling to pay, and this bill just basically makes it even worse. So, any thoughts on this one, Michael? You're muted there.
Thank you. This bill is going to make House Bill 1001 even worse for Colorado because they're already trying to play games. This is simply put crony capitalism at its worst. And they're going to use
Definitely.
this to take local control away.
Yeah, I mean it's a bad bill basically to steal more money out of the pockets of hardworking Coloradans. Both those bills, 1289 is definitely one of the most egregious bills we've seen this year. So people please raise awareness, speak out against it, and yeah, testify if you can. Show up to the committee hearing. I'll be trying to keep you updated as much as I can on Free State Colorado as well. But horrible, horrible bills there, folks. That's Monday, March 23rd in the House Finance Committee. We're going to stick on Monday here, so also being heard on March 23rd in the House State Affairs Committee, just for shorthand. two horrible bill, well, two interesting bills. One absolutely horrible, 1302 is a really bad bill we're going to dig into. Senate Bill 59, I kind of have some mixed feelings on. I'd love to hear what people have to say in the chat, but check this one out first. Let's go to 1302. So this is the bill, the controversial bill here, folks. This is the one that is getting Anthony Hartsook, at least part of the reason he's getting a primary challenger, part of the reason why he's throwing out gun rights lobbyists out of the Capitol, and he's teaming up with Andrew Bosnecker, aka Andrew Bootlicker, the architect of Senate Bill 3, the worst gun bill Colorado's ever seen. Him and Anthony Hartsook working together. I mean, it's a match made in hell, for frankly. Horrible, horrible stuff here. Check this out here. So let's read the summary of the legislation, and then I got an article as well that we'll go into on this. But the bill removes the requirement that the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, CBI's, Insta Check unit remain open for at least 12 hours a day for every calendar day except Thanksgiving and Christmas. Instead, the CBI is authorized to determine Insta Check operating hours that best meet business needs. The CBI must continuously review certain statistics to determine appropriate hours of operation. So right now, folks, for you to be able to get a firearm legally in Colorado, you have to go through the CBI's InstaCheck as well as the federal government's check. It's absolutely redundant and stupid. But nonetheless, if Colorado Bureau of Investigation is being forced or is saying like, listen, oh, you don't have to be open 12 hours a day, you can be open less. Well, that's going to delay people's ability to get their background check completed to be able to legally purchase a firearm. So that's entirely what this bill does. And of course, Anthony Hartsook, he's that type of Republican who's a big government guy. Like he's like, oh no, we got to help out the local governments here, and give them more. But it's like, no, no, sir, you're there for the people, representative, you're supposed to be representing the people, not the government, trying to put our rights to be delayed to give the government more opportunity there. So bad stuff. And part of the reason they do this bill is this bill is growing the 3-day waiting period, right? So the 3-day waiting period right now in Colorado is being fought in court. It's being fought in court nationally as well in other states. So they're saying, okay, well, now that so Anthony Hartsook, a Republican, says, okay, well, now that we got the 3-day waiting period, let's go ahead and give CBI the ability to be more flexible with their schedule because there's 3 days wait anyway, so they can take longer to process background checks. Well, if the 3-day waiting period ends up getting overturned in court, this bill is just basically saying they can still take their 3 days. They can take how long they need, really, to get your background check carried out, which is absolutely terrible, absolutely bad stuff. I want to jump into article here, but what are your thoughts on this before we do that, Michael?
Yeah, I think another thing that's concerning to me about this bill is, uh, let's say, for example, there are times, Black Friday deal happens. Everybody comes to the gun store. And this happens all over Colorado. I know that especially since wintertime is one of the biggest times of the year. It's one of the busiest seasons. You would think. I just found this out recently, for example. I would have thought summer, when everybody's out being able to, enjoy the outdoors, that would be one of the busiest times for a gun store. No, it's actually the wintertime, especially late fall, etc. So Black Friday is going to be a huge day for gun stores. You're going to have background checks that are going to be piling up, especially when a gun store opens up early on Black Friday. You're going to have all these instant checks piling up, piling up, piling up, piling up. They've got a 3-day waiting period. A bill like this is actually going to allow for longer delays because there's a good chance that CBI is not going to be able to get to every single one of these background checks, especially if there's some sort of glitch in the system where somebody might, end up having a flag on their profile for whatever reason, especially if it's a innocent individual who didn't actually do anything. Uh, that's going to cause delays. So we're actually going to be infringing on individuals' rights with this bill because it's going to end up taking a 3-day waiting period and turning into a 5-day waiting period, a 7-day waiting period, a 2-week waiting period, all for a background check that's unconstitutional in the first place. That's why there's such an issue with this bill, especially with somebody like Anthony Hartsook, who already is in hot water with the gun community. This is just another black mark on his anti-2A record.
Completely agree with you 100%. I want to pull up this article from We the Second. We got Leslie Hollywood, another gun rights activist here and liberty leader. Colorado lawmakers from both parties seek to restrict when you can buy a gun. I'm going to share this in the chat, so check that out. House Bill 1032 is scheduled for its first public hearing. That's what we're talking about right now. So, Colorado lawmakers tend to move gun policy in two ways. I'll just read some of the excerpts here. Some bills are direct and highly visible, clear restrictions that generate immediate attention. Others are less obvious. They are framed as process changes or administrative updates, but they reshape how the system works in ways that ultimately affect access. Although 1302 falls into the second category, it doesn't even pretend to not be about firearms. The bill itself is titled Colorado Bureau of Investigation Firearms Instant Check Unit Operating Hours. HB 1302 gives the CBI Instant Check Unit, the system that processes every legal firearm background check in Colorado, authority to determine its own operating hours. On its face, that sounds administrative, but in Colorado, that is a gateway every lawful purchase must pass through. The bill is sponsored in part by the Democrat Andrew Bootlicker, who has sponsored other egregious gun control legislation, such as Senate Bill 3. But on House Bill 1302, gun grabber bootlicker is joined by Representative Anthony Hartsook, a Republican who makes it harder to dismiss this bill as routine partisan legislation that begs the question of why a Republican is putting his name on gun control in a state where Republicans make up the minority. And this is not Hartsook's first attempt this year to use the CBI as the mechanism. An earlier bill of his, House Bill 1108, also impacted gun owners through administrative means. That bill was eventually tabled. So, under current law, a firearm transfer cannot be completed until a background check is processed through InstaCheck. If the system is not operating, the transaction does not move forward. Currently, that system, along with the required operating hours, is dictated by law. House Bill 1302 shifts that. It places control of the system's availability in the hands of CBI, meaning the state would determine when background checks are processed, and by extension, when firearm purchases can be completed. The reason for that shift is written directly into the bill itself, which we just saw, is because of Colorado's 3-day waiting period. In short, justification for changing how and when background checks are processed is that the waiting period already slowed things down, so they might as well be given the authority to slow it down anymore. Then Leslie in the article here goes through the lawsuit that they're fighting. So even if that law is the lawsuit the RMGO is fighting there on the 3-day background check, so if that law is struck down, the state loses a fixed statutory delay. If House Bill 1302 were to pass, instead of requiring a defined delay in law, it allows the state to influence timing through the system itself. If background checks are only processed during certain hours, or if access to the system is limited, transactions are delayed regardless of the buyer's eligibility. So you can read the rest of the article there, folks, but it is a horrible, horrible bill that was going to delay your ability to be able to legally purchase a firearm here in Colorado. And that's why hopefully people know now why Representative Hartsook is in such hot water with the Liberty community here in Colorado. Any other thoughts on this, Michael?
Anthony Hartsook has a primary challenger. His name is Robert Davis. He also goes by Bob Davis. I would highly encourage you guys to reach out, find ways to donate. Once his website and everything is up, he just decided to run yesterday, and he officially is the primary challenger for Anthony Hertzog. I highly encourage you guys to get involved, do what you can to support him, because we need good liberty leaders in Colorado. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. We need good liberty leaders to step up. And I would prefer to have Republicans just because of the track record of Democrats. But we need good Republicans. We need to support the best Republicans we possibly can. And Anthony Hartsook has time and time again, from Senate Bill 86 even to 1108 this year, 1302 just now. I mean, we're seeing time and time and time again where Anthony Hartsook is an actual enemy of the 2A community. So please, if you can, do what you can to support Bob Davis in his primary challenge against Anthony Hartsook.
Yes, sir, definitely 100%. So in this same committee hearing tomorrow, folks, on Monday, March 23rd, there's also Senate Bill 59. We've talked about this one in the past, so we probably won't spend a lot of time on it, but just wanted to bring it up because I know people out there, some people watching, I can see in the chat, know people who are going to be running for the state, who are running actively for the legislature this year, who are already serving in another elected capacity. So basically, and this is interesting, folks, just to point this out, see how everything's kind of italicized on the bill summary. Italicized parts here are the amended parts of the bill, and same with the strike throughs. So the original language is there, and then you can say, oh, that was an amendment part of the bill. So it says, beginning with the first regular session of the 76th General Assembly, the bill prohibits a member of the General Assembly from holding any other elected offices while serving as a member of the General Assembly, with the following exceptions. The member of the General Assembly holds a special district elected office. The member of the General Assembly has less than 1 year remaining in their term in another elected office at the time they take the oath of the office of the General Assembly, or the member of the General Assembly has less than 1 year remaining in their term in the General Assembly at the time they take the oath of office in another elected office And finally, the member of the General Assembly is a senator who's in the middle of their term at the beginning of the first regular session of the 76th General Assembly. So you can see there, folks, they really want to limit people's ability to serve. I know we have, I think, Representative Max Brooks from Douglas County, who's been a great Liberty leader. I think he's still on the City Council of Castle Rock or the Town Council, if I'm not mistaken, and then is also serving. So he wouldn't be able to do that anymore. I don't know if this makes sense or not. I mean, if a local community says, you're in the legislature, but you're able to handle it, and we also want you to serve in a local capacity on a school board or in a town council, should they be able to, if the voters want them to and trust them to do that? I don't see why not. But this is an interesting bill being heard this week, so I just wanted to bring it up to people. Any other thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think that this is my viewpoint on this is mixed because one, if a legislator is not allowed to be a member of like a city board council, etc., I could see how there could be benefits to the legislature because that could help keep the legislative session is extremely intensive work, especially for the amount of pay that a legislature gets. You're talking less than $50,000. So somebody like that, especially in Colorado with their affordability issues, it's really difficult for somebody to exclusively be a legislator. So somebody has to take care of their family on top of being a legislator. Plus, if they were to be a member of a city council, that's also going to take up a lot of time. So it might be too much. An individual might be overextending themselves by serving in all these different capacities. So I could definitely see where might be coming from in support of Senate Bill 59. But at the same time, if somebody's serving like a Max Brooks as city council member, they are also connected to their own local community. That keeps them rooted in their local area, and that is also critically important. So I definitely see where people are coming from. I mean, I definitely see how keeping somebody's roots grounded in their local community and coming with that updated and fresh perspective to the capital, that's going to help keep individuals' mindsets correct in what they should be doing, which is serving their local communities. So I definitely see valid points and valid concerns from both sides on this one, and my mind is not fully made up on with this bill as well.
Yeah, interesting bill. Made it out of the Senate and now its first committee hearing in the House on Monday, March 23rd, if people are interested to tune in. And nice thing too is they record all the committee hearings on the legislative website, so you can go back and listen, watch, hear testimony, hear what people had to say. So there's so much information out there, folks, to be an informed leader in your own community here. On Tuesday now, so moving on to Tuesday, March 24th, 2026, upon adjournment of the House and House Committee Room 112, is the House Health and Human Services Committee. This is a horrible bill that has made some attention. Now you see there's multiple bills here, but I really want to point out House Bill 1327, I think, is the most important bill being heard on this committee hearing. Basically, folks, you think the economy is bad now. You think employers are fleeing the state of Colorado. This bill is going to give large employers another reason to leave the state. Let's go ahead and click in on the fiscal note to read the bill summary there, just because it's a little bit more digestible. Because as people were pointing out in the chat, this is definitely a lot of information. Look at this, folks. $57 million at least in 28, 29 every year. Insane amounts of money, folks. Insane amounts of money going into our state government, of course, coming from employers. Check this out. Summary of the legislation. The bill creates the large employer healthcare support enterprise. So it's an enterprise, not a tax. It's a fee, which is total garbage. And the Department of Health Care Policy and Financing to collect fees from large employers with employees who are enrolled in Medicaid. This bill applies to employers with 500 or more employees enrolled in the state Medicaid program, not including workers who are under 18 years old or seasonally employed. And the bill further exempts certain employers there. But basically, it's going to be created to fund medical assistance benefits for employees at large employers who enrolled in the state's Medicaid program. So the crazy thing is, of course, these employers don't necessarily have control over their employees deciding to sign up for Medicaid or not. You know what I mean? Of course, there's qualifications for Medicaid, but at the same time, here's the key here, folks. Here's the key. By August 1st, 2028, and each year thereafter, large employers must pay either a $2,300 fee per Medicaid enrolled worker or demonstrate that it offers affordable health coverage. to the state government. So they're paying $2,300 per Medicaid enrolled worker. So you know what that means. If an employee is on Medicaid, they're going to try and fire them. They don't want to hire them. They don't want them to work there. So you got to think now. You're incentivizing employers to not employ people who are on Medicaid. These are the people who are probably the most vulnerable in society, the ones who need the opportunity to have a job. So they are not the state government's not only punishing people who are on that level of society that are probably struggling to get by because they require Medicaid, and now saying, listen, it's going to be more expensive to hire these people. So you are actually making it less likely that these people are going to be working at large employers. I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane, and it just shows how perverse incentives can be when you actually talk about economics. And of course, it's crazy, folks. I mean, you're raising costs, pulling millions and millions of dollars out of our state, sending them there. So check this out real quick. The fiscal note estimates that there are at least 25,000 Medicaid enrolled workers are employed by employers subject to the bill's enterprise fee. It's based on this data. As of February 2026, approximately 1.2 million Coloradans were enrolled in the state Medicaid program. Of that amount, about 556,000 are adults under age 65 without disabilities. National research indicates that approximately 64% of Medicaid enrolled adults work full or part time, and about 48% of that working population is employed by organizations with more than 100 employees. Applying these proportions to the Colorado population results in an estimated 171,000 Medicaid enrolled workers employed by organizations with more than 100 employees. However, this bill applies only to a subset of these workers. Specifically, the enterprise fee is assessed on employers with 500 or more Medicaid enrolled workers and excludes employers that meet the bill's exemption criteria. Because administrative data do not identify Medicaid enrolled workers simultaneously by employee size and exemption status, the fiscal note applies further assumptions. So they really don't know exactly. And that's what's so interesting. It's the limitation on what a lot of these bills have. Like these legislators are voting on this, and like we think this is what it's going to do. But nonetheless, I won't keep going through this here, folks. But the idea is basically you're raising taxes on Colorado employers. You're making it less likely that people who are on Medicaid are going to get jobs, and you're pushing employers out of the state of Colorado is ultimately what it comes down to there. So I just really wanted to get people's attention on this one. The healthcare industry is so messed up in our country and our state, and this is not solving the actual problem there. What do you think, Michael?
I think this is a perfect opportunity to put Felisa Frey under the hot seat. This lady thinks that she's safe in a district because she represents a majority of Arvada, particularly the Old Town area. Uh, this bill is going to attack a lot of the individuals who are living in who live in her district. Think about all the big businesses. We just lost Palantir. Well, Palantir did some very nasty stuff to a lot of people. We still it still harms Colorado when big businesses pull out. And this is going to continue to harm Colorado because we're going to start to see more and more big businesses leave Colorado because, quite frankly, they're not going to be able to support. Not going to be able to support stuff like this. The other thing is, Brandon mentioned taxes versus fees. They're going to use the word fee to get around Tabor, in spite of how much money they're going to be bringing in with this bill if it were to pass. So, very, very concerning that they're going to try to do a workaround on Tabor with this bill as well. I mean, look at that. Remember what I said? If you guys remember a little bit ago, if a bill brings in $100 million within the first 5 years, is subject to Tabor. I mean, in the first 2 years alone, they don't even know how much they're going to bring in, but they're arguing at least 57.5 million in years three and out year 3 and 4. So very, very concerned about this bill. They're going to try to screw everyone over because they're using fees. A bill like this, in the spirit of Tabor, should still be voted on by the people of Colorado.
Definitely, totally violates the spirit of Tabor and just another cash grab. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. Their argument is like, well, these employers aren't providing health insurance, and so they're relying on the state, so they need to chip in more. It's like, well, I thought the idea of this whole Medicaid thing, everybody's already paying into it. Like this is like it's they just keep on going for it, take as much more, and you just keep taking hundreds of millions and billions of dollars out of the actual private sector, and then people wake up and are like, well, wait, where did all the jobs go? Where did all the employers go? So Tuesday, March 24th, in the House Health and Human Services Justice Committee. Important bill being heard there, folks, for sure. So wanted to bring that to your attention. Also on Tuesday, Representative Dan Woog has his bill finally being heard. We've talked about it a few times. There's always so I love judiciary. There's just so many interesting things that happen because it has to do with criminal law, and there's so many things here. So this is a bipartisan bill with Cecilia Espinoza, former judge, Democrat legislator. She's relatively pro law enforcement, as you can see here. It'll be very interesting to see how the other committee members react to this bill. Very curious what they do here. Um, let's go ahead and click into the fiscal note. I don't really care for the advisory panel that this board creates and the task force and the grant program, nonetheless. But an attempt here to try and go after retail theft, which also is a bad thing as well. So the bill creates a task force, advisory board, and grant program regarding retail theft in the Department of Law. The statewide task force is formed by the Attorney General to provide greater coordination among law enforcement to take enforcement action against organized criminal rings engaged in retail theft. The advisory board is designated to administer the retail theft grant program for local and state law enforcement, district attorneys, multi-jurisdictional or regional tax offices, and tribal law enforcement. Grants may be used to investigate and prosecute organized felony level retail theft. I mean, this should be what all the government is really doing, if you ask me. Or gift card fraud, develop or invest in technology to analyze felony level retail theft and gift card fraud metrics, provide training or technical assistance to retailers or law enforcement agencies, or develop prevention and deterrence initiatives. Grants must be paid out of gifts, grants, and donations received by this Department of Law. So, it's not like, don't get me wrong, this bill doesn't do a lot. It's trying to address the problem in a way that's palatable to the Democrat majority because we've seen attempts in the past falter and fail to say, hey, listen, we're going to try and lock up retail criminals even more. Brandy Bradley had a bill this last year trying to do that. So it's a very minor bill. Don't get me wrong. This is the only way I think Representative Wu could get a bill through that's trying to go after retail theft, is to say, well, let's figure out a way to do this and still get the Democrats to support it. So not a great bill. Don't get me wrong, but I just wanted to bring it to attention because there's a lot of interesting aspects to it. What do you think about this one, Michael?
Yeah, Espinoza's always red flag, but at the same time, I get where Woog's coming from. I really like Woog. I think he's a good guy. I think he's got the best interests of Colorado in mind. He's also in one of those swing districts. Yeah, he was one of the guys that signed a pledge with or not a pledge, but didn't sign. Excuse me, he did not sign a pledge with the LP, but he did come up with an agreement with the LP that uh, he came up with an agreement, if you guys aren't familiar with the Liberty Pledge, where uh, he decided he was going to adhere to a certain set of principles that were palatable to the libertarians, and the libertarians in return decided not to run a candidate, and in turn, he ended up winning his district by a little over 100 votes. And if the libertarian was in there, they likely would have not won that election, just like the person in 2022 ended up the Republican ended up losing because there was a libertarian spoiler in that race as well. So um, it's this is going to be a very interesting bill because um, he is a good guy. I do think he is a good guy. Um, but I am concerned about two things. One, there's grant money involved. Grant money coming from the from the state. Does that mean that there's going to be certain purse strings excuse me, are there going to be certain strings attached because they're state funds, and is that going to in turn give up local control because of this grant program, especially with there being this new task force? We all know how much Democrats love to add task forces and additional bureaucracy to everything. The other thing I'm kind of questioning is why not just increase the penalties? Because at the end of the day, we are talking about theft. This is something that the government should be, if the government's going to exist, this is something that the government should be in charge of, is making sure that they are protecting our rights, particularly our property rights. So I would love to see something. So I'm kind of curious why we're not just adding additional penalties or basically increasing some of the penalties if this is becoming a bigger problem in Colorado.
Yeah, definitely a major problem. We still have so much more crime in Colorado than we should. Also, on Tuesday, March 24th, 2 p.m. in the Senate, this is the rework of last year's of 2025's Senate Bill 5, the taking away the second election for forced unionization at employers. This is going to be heard Tuesday, so expect a big union presence down at the state capitol, which we've seen a lot this year, of course, every year. But absolutely horrible bill. Jared Polis says he's going to veto it again from everything I've heard. They left this whole committee open just for this one bill to be discussed. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but folks, if you care about our right to work or understand the problems with unions in Colorado and how basically they fund Democrat candidates and all the bad stuff that we see, then you definitely want to pay attention to this. And hopefully, this bill ends up being vetoed by the governor. But unfortunately, I'm sure both the Democrat nominees for or candidates for governor are going to sign this bill into law less next year or so if it goes through. So interesting stuff. This is kind of maybe even a preview of what we're happening here in Colorado in the future. Right now, to have forced collectivization of a union in Colorado, there's two votes, a simple majority to start the process, and then I think it's either 2/3 or 3/4, if I'm not mistaken. This bill basically removes that second vote, so you could have 50% plus one of the people voting decide to form a union, and now all of a sudden you're stuck with it. And there you go. More money for the Democrats is ultimately what it comes down to. So horrible bill. I just want to keep people updated on this being heard this Tuesday, March 24th in the Senate Business Committee. Any thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I don't know how many people have watched Rocky Mountain Heist, but if you've watched Rocky Mountain Heist, there's a book very similar that adds a lot more detail to that documentary called The Blueprint. I think every single Coloradan who is interested in politics should understand who wants to understand why we are in the position we are in today should go read The Blueprint. It's incredibly informative, and one of the chapters starts off with talking about Lakeside, Colorado, and the Lakeside Amusement Park, and how right next door to the Lakeside Amusement Park and the train that goes around the lake at Lakeside Amusement Park sits next to the Colorado um, Teamsters building. And that Teamsters building was right where the blueprint was in the round table met to basically strategize how to take Colorado away from the Republicans in 2004, and they've never looked back. So and if you know one other thing about the blueprint is everybody tried to scratch their back. The moderates would always try to scratch the progressives back and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, where everybody worked together so that way everybody could get a little bit and they could slowly erode our rights away one bill at a time. And that's how we've got to where we are today. So this is just another bill that's going to continue down that path. And now we're scratching the backs of the unions. They haven't been able to yet, but now but because thankfully Polis vetoed it. I don't, it's very ironic that Polis vetoed it in spite of how much Polis has done for the unions and how much the unions have done for Polis. Because remember, he is a part of that gang of four, but I'm really hoping that we could possibly get this bill struck down. Um, and I really like what you said, like what you've highlighted here, Brandon. It allows a labor union to require that union fees be paid by all covered workers, even those that choose not to join the union, and may require the automatic withdrawal of union dues from employees' wages as a condition of employment. They're going to turn this entire state into a closed shop. That means that you're going to be forced, if you want to work at a certain location, you're going to be forced to pay dues to a union that you absolutely loathe. They're going to be taking $2 to $3 away from you every single hour, if not more. If the union dues are more than that, you're going to have to pay even more than that. It's absolutely unacceptable, and this is going to be mandated by the state government. I find that to be completely unacceptable.
Forced unionization, that's the big thing. Requirements. They steal money out of your paycheck to another government, basically, and then they use that money to further erode your rights, as you're pointing out, Michael. So horrible, horrible stuff. People in Colorado, a lot of us, I think, don't realize how bad unions are because we've had this Labor Peace Act and we've had this second require election requirement for so long that we haven't seen as much of the negative effects as unions as we would. But fortunately, folks, this is a preview of things to come if we don't get our act together and get some of these bad legislators out of office. So horrible, horrible stuff being heard this Tuesday in the Senate Business Committee. Also on Tuesday in the Senate Finance Committee is the Property Tax Modifications Bill, Senate Bill 116. This is its first committee hearing, Senate Committee Room 357. Love that room, but just because of 357, but at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, March 24th. Absolutely horrible bill here, folks. So, of course, it's from Weissman and Zokai, two of the worst that we have down at the state capitol there. But another bill to give municipalities the authority upon voter approval to levy a lodging tax up to the same rate for the same purposes allowed to counties to be collected, administered, and enforced by the state. So there you go, folks. You could basically have more taxes, more lodging taxes, And that's what they want to do. So, you think of it that way. It's not good stuff, of course. There's a lot that goes on here, but basically the idea is higher taxes and providing on businesses that provide lodging and this and that. So you can read through this, especially if you're involved in this industry. It's very important, but nonetheless, a very bad bill for sure. And right now, counties in Colorado may impose a lodging tax of up to 6% on the purchase price of rooms and accommodations that are subject to state sales tax, and then they want to expand that to municipalities. So now all of a sudden there's going to be a 12% tax. And it's like lodging is going to get more and more expensive. So bad stuff overall. And of course, any new taxes need to be opposed. Any thoughts on this one, Michael? You're muted, Michael.
Thank you. You know the phrase the government will break your leg just to sell you the cure for breaking your leg. This is exactly what it's going to do because they're gonna take your taxes. They're going to basically uh, tax the tourist industry with this bill. And then they're going to turn around and say, now with all this money that we've taken from the tourist industry, that's going to make it even less affordable to be a tourist and visit Colorado and see all the great things that our state has to offer. They're going to turn around and say, oh, you need to use that money and just promote tourism in Colorado. Well, all they've done is made it less and less affordable. They're making it less affordable to even travel to Colorado, and this is gonna just harm the tourist industry in our state.
Yeah, definitely, bad bill. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing all across the state. We're seeing so much of this year. But yeah, I mean, just less and less reasons why local businesses should set up shop here in Colorado and why they have to end up spending more money. So, interesting stuff. But there we go, folks. Moving on. Also, in Tuesday on March 24th in the Senate State Affairs Committee, this is a big one because it got a lot of attention when it went through the state house. So, just want to make sure people had all the information on it. This is House Bill 1084. The first bill scheduled on there, but of course it could not necessarily be the first bill. Basically, this bill makes it more difficult for ballot measures, is um, how I would describe this bill. And why does it do that? Why do I say that? Well, listen to this. The bill requires that certain language appear in the ballot title for an initiated statewide measure that would increase state expenditures, but does not identify or provide for a sufficient source of revenue or sufficient reductions in state spending for specific public services or program areas to account for the increased expenditures. The ballot title for a measure that increases state expenditures must include language identifying the three largest program areas of state expenditures, of which state expenditures will likely be reduced if the measure passes, which must be in a format substantially similar to the following language. If the ballot measure specifies the public services or programs that are to be reduced, those public services or programs must be stated in the ballot title. So basically, they're trying to rig ballot initiatives, folks. This is totally in response to Advance Colorado's ballot measure that passed in 2024, I believe, to increase payouts to law enforcement like widows and law enforcement, people who passed away and this and that, and law enforcement spending. People remember that initiative. Advance Colorado got on the ballot and voters approved it and said, yeah, let's give some of this money to law enforcement to go after criminals, to make sure that people who are, um, you know, killed in the line of duty are able to be made whole, their families are taken care of. Well, the state legislature was very unhappy with that because they said, okay, you're telling us we got to spend this money, but you're not telling us where we should spend this money. And it's like, well, that's your job as legislators to figure that out. So this bill is going to say we don't want those types of citizen initiatives to happen anymore. We don't like the idea, and we want to try and basically say that, yeah, if you're going to increase state, you need to tell the voters where you're thinking it's coming from, which is why they're talking about transparency here. But ultimately, the legislators can decide where this money comes from. So it's just likely to be reduced. The people who are crafting these ballot titles will have no say whatsoever how that money is coming from unless it's in the actual ballot initiative language. So bad stuff overall, folks. It's really an attempt to try and chill the citizen initiative process is ultimately what it comes down to. So that's why I oppose this House Bill 1084. What are your thoughts, Michael?
I think it's very critical to point out that if you go back down to the bill summary real quick, you can see here it wants you to know it once it's looking for specifically the three largest areas of program expenditures that will be reduced. But it doesn't say anything about the three largest program areas of state expenditures that will be possibly increased by other bills. So they want, they're basically, as you're saying, they're trying to attack one side of the political spectrum, and I find that to be extremely concerning because a bill like this should be objective, it should be neutral, and they're basically just going on attack, and it's another attack by the party of democracy on democracy itself, and I find that to be highly hypocritical.
Yeah, I mean that's the idea is they want to say we don't like the idea that citizens are having direct access to how the state of Colorado is run. We should leave it up to these know-it-all legislators here who are making horrible decisions. And yeah, so that's the attempt there. That's the reality of it, folks. Now I thought this was interesting. So we're on Wednesday, March 25th now, 1:30 p.m. in the House Judiciary Committee. Two interesting bills that are very related. House Bill 1322. We haven't talked about this one before. Pretty interesting stuff here. So I don't know if anybody hears about what conversion therapy is. Let's jump into the fiscal note, see if they provide a definition. It's pretty interesting. The bill creates a civil cause of action for individuals injured as a result of sexual orientation or gender identity change efforts. So that's what's called conversion therapy. So if somebody basically says, if some kid says, "Oh, I'm actually a trans and I'm a 7-year-old kid, I'm actually a woman, I'm not a boy," and a therapist says, "No, you are actually a boy," that can be considered conversion therapy and could be actually illegal. And then now those licensed mental health professionals can be sued for just basically doing that. Actions may be brought against a licensed mental health professional who engaged in the efforts, a person or entity that employed or supervised the professional and knew or should have known of the conduct of a person or a person who negligently hired or supervised the professional. Wow. Plaintiffs may recover economic damages, non-economic damages, exemplary damages, as well as any other damages deemed appropriate by the court. Civil actions may be commenced at any time without limitation. If the injured individual is deceased, the person's representative may bring a survival action within 5 years of the individual's death. So this is basically doubling down on Colorado's being a capital of this whole transsexual agenda. It's absolutely crazy here, folks. But basically saying, yeah, if anybody contradicts somebody's preferred sexual orientation or gender identity stuff, if you contradict them, you are committing quote unquote conversion therapy. And now people can sue you if there's some sort of harm being done to the person. So this is a horrible example, folks, of weaponizing our state government to try and go after people to promote this social agenda. So crazy stuff. Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I find it very interesting that if you tell a boy that they're actually a boy, which aligns with their chromosomal makeup, but if you tell a boy is who's actually a girl, or sorry, if you tell a boy that they're actually a girl, and then you go on top of that and prescribe them with puberty blockers, you allow them to undergo certain procedures that are going to permanently alter their makeup, whether it's mastectomies or certain surgeries that are going to cosmetically alter the way their body functions for the rest of their life that might quote unquote align with their new desired gender identity, that those individuals will not be considered um, victims of conversion therapy, particularly if they decide at a later date that's a mistake. And we've actually seen previous bills during this legislature, particularly one that was sponsored by the great Ken DeGraff, uh, that was struck down in committee. So I'm extremely concerned that this is going to harm Coloradans in a very, very wrong way. And they're going to say that if you don't affirm these certain gender identities in one direction, because you can see right here, it says in efforts to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, not gender itself. They're actively attacking Coloradans, they're attacking kids, and this is absolutely going to be devastating for kids in Colorado, and I'm extremely concerned about the future. Here's the other thing. I'm also concerned about how far back this goes. This law goes. So is this going to attack churches? Is this going to attack Christian therapists who might look at the Bible instead of the DSM-5 as much as certain Colorado legislators might want them to? Uh, I think that we could very well be seeing a First Amendment violation very, very soon if this bill were to pass.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look at this. Here's what they're setting up, folks. So a lot of times this legislative declaration at the beginning of the bill kind of lays out why they're doing it. So the idea is here, somebody says, okay, I'm really a girl, and they're like, no, you're really a boy. And then like years later, they're like, oh my gosh, I suffered so much psychological injury from this and that, and it was so harmful to me, and I ended up doing these bad things. Now I can go back and sue them, this medical professional, for telling me that as a kid, and it's all their fault. It's all their fault I have all these problems and this and that. I mean, this is absolutely insane. It's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I'd see First Amendment issues, lots of other things. I mean, you could read what they say, what this change efforts, any practice by a licensed mental health professional that seeks to direct a patient toward a predetermined sexual orientation or gender identity outcome, including efforts to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity, or eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of a particular sex or gender, regardless of the sexual orientation or gender identity the patient is directed to. So if you're like, yeah, listen there, maybe you should rethink what you're doing here. And they're like, no, you're going to get sued now. And it's all your fault. All these horrible problems have been caused. So bad bill, folks. This is crazy. It'll be very interesting to see the committee hearing on this one. But this is going to be heard this week. And there's the representative, Alex Valdez, who is one of the most extreme far left legislators, Karen McCormick, Lisa Cutter. And Lisa Cutter also tried to decriminalize prostitution. And Kyle Mullica. Kyle Mullica's in kind of a little bit more of a swing district. He definitely needs to hear from his voters on this. This is Wednesday, March 25th in the House Judiciary Committee. So absolutely crazy stuff, folks. Um, Bad bill overall. Definitely check that one out. And then also in that same committee is Senate Bill 18. So there's a lot going on in this committee around this one issue. And oftentimes the legislators will do this on purpose to get all the, so people don't have to show up for a second committee hearing for testimony because it's similar. What's interesting is Jared Polis did actually have them remove this part of the bill that would have determined parenting time and allocation of decision-making responsibilities, requiring a court to consider whether the parent recognizes the child's identity as it relates to a protected class. So, if so they did remove that from the bill, but still nonetheless a bad bill overall. Won't go too much in detail on it tonight, but I'll share it in the chat if people want to dig into it. Any thoughts on Senate Bill 18, Michael?
Yeah, this bill aligns with some of the sections that were initially struck from 1312. It's still an extremely it's still an extremely terrible bill, and it's extremely concerning for parental rights as well as the future of kids in this state, because it's still going to allow the suppression of court records. So if you're a parent, you might not even know that your kid has a new name or a new identity. And that's extremely scary for parents all over the country, especially think about what might happen uh, if a parent gets a new job and suddenly they have to take their and the entire family has to move. Well, what's going to happen when that family has to move and they don't know that they're signing people up, their children up with how do I want to say this? What happens when a parent has to sign a document, a legal document, under the penalty of perjury, and they're filling out incorrect information because they don't even know that their kid has a new name? That could even happen in Colorado. Because as parents, you still are legally responsible for filling out a new name, filling out a new gender. I mean, this bill might unknowingly be putting parents under the penalty of perjury and committing and you could absolutely see somebody lose other rights because perjury is a felony. So I'm very, very concerned about this bill. If you guys can get down to the Capitol on this one and testify, please do.
Interesting stuff this Wednesday, folks. Also, this Thursday now, we're going over the bills for people just joining us and what's happening in the state legislature this week. We have the Senate State Affairs Committee. This one is getting a lot of awareness from people across the state. I've heard a lot about this one online. Senate Bill 119 to authorize local electronic ballot return. Now, a lot of us in Colorado, of course, are very concerned about the integrity of our elections and this idea of how things can be manipulated with electronics, with computers, things like this. So this bill bill will amend the Colorado Local Government Election Code and the Colorado Municipal Election Code of 1965 to add authorization for special districts and municipalities, so your cities, to use electronic ballot return in elections under the local code. Electronic ballot return allows a voter to return a marked ballot to a designated election official or clerk using a qualified electronic transmission system. It must provide for secure identification and authentication. How's it going to do that without digital ID? Transmit the encrypted information over a secure network. Who can guarantee that? Protect the privacy, anonymity, and integrity of each elector's ballot. Seems like a lot of issues there. Protect against abuse. Providing additional security, other measure identified as necessary. The designated election official or clerk is responsible for ensuring electronic ballot returns or anonymously transcribed to paper ballots counted and secured pursuant to the law for all ballots. Any electronic data generated by an elector using an electronic transmission system is confidential. The Secretary of State is required to publish guidance and may adopt rules as necessary. So here we go, folks, where they're trying to move into using just online voting. Bad news, totally, very scary stuff for sure. The ability for things to be manipulated, things change. So this bill is being heard Thursday. If you care about election integrity, Thursday, March 26th in the Senate State Affairs Committee upon adjournment of the Senate. So check that out. Show up if you can, but pay attention if you care about the integrity of our elections. This is a committee hearing you definitely want to pay attention to. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's way too many possibilities for somebody online to intercept your potential ballot. This is also going to allow for this is going to allow for a lot of opportunities for somebody to just get into the elections, into our election systems on a local level and do everything they can to manipulate our elections. I mean, especially these days, think about our foreign relations and what foreign actors can do, particularly Iran. I mean, I know we are uh us and Iran are not on very good terms right now. I don't mean Colorado, but I mean internationally with the U.S. With what we're doing overseas. So think about what that country or China or Russia or somebody else might want to do with to might do to interfere with our elections. I think this leaves us up to way too many possibilities to see our elections be rigged in Colorado.
Well, sure. And it starts off as being voluntary, right? Like, oh, you can vote by electronic. Oh, you need a digital ID. And then they're like, oh, no, now you have to. And don't get me wrong, like some of the people who are like, you need an ID might be like, okay, this could be a good thing, right? Because how else are they going to do it? But folks, I think that's a bad way to move is to say we got to require digital IDs and everybody to log in and it goes into this computer system. And who knows if it's accurate or not. I mean, I don't think this is moving us in the right direction. I'd be very curious to see what people think on this one. Tune into this committee hearing if you can and learn about it. I'm sure you'll get a lot of information about this bill this Thursday, March 26th. So very interesting stuff there, folks. And then also on Thursday in the House Business Affairs Committee, this is in Committee Room 112. Just want to quickly go through three of these bills. I know we're getting past our time here in terms of where we wanted to be, but just want to bring this up very briefly here because there's some good bills. At least this one, House Bill 1190. And I've said it for a long time, if we'd increase our freedom and liberty in Colorado around the alcohol industry, I think there's some possibility there. The voters want that. We just need legislators to get on board with it. So this bill is a very minor increase in our freedom here. And we've talked about this one multiple times about the winery club, about having an expanded sales room permit. We even talked about this, I believe, last week. I think it got delayed. Something happened where it was going to be heard, but this will be supposedly this time its first committee hearing. I won't spend too much time on it, but I'll share it in the chat. But check that out if you're interested. But let's have expanded sales room permits, authorizing a manufacturer, limited winery, or wholesaler that manufactures beer to operate a restaurant. Good. Sell or provide alcoholic beverages that are not manufactured by the permit holder for consumption and they can obtain a separate expanded sales room permit for each location, have sandwiches and light snacks. So right now, folks, the industry, the alcohol industry, and the ability for these like breweries and stuff to serve is very limited and very controlled. This bill expands that and even allows a distillery pub licensee to sell more liters of product per year. So this is an expansion. It's a very limited expansion of our freedom around alcohol. It allows this winery club to be formed where people can ship wine directly to an individual. That's great for our local wineries here in Colorado who just got uh, supported by the defeat of two bad bills last week. So it's a good bill. We've talked about it before, but just wanted to bring it up because it's supposed to be heard this week in committee. Any thoughts, Michael?
No, I agree. I think this is a really good bill. It's very rare to see two Democrats on a good bill, but I think this is a good bill. We need more options for Colorado. We need more options for Colorado industries. I know, for example, you go to Tommy Knocker Brewery in Idaho Springs. and you can sit down, you can have a beers, but this is going to allow a lot more alcohol. This is going to be a lot of breweries in the alcohol industry to actually be able to provide a restaurant, allow people to have more options, and this might be the difference between thriving and surviving. So I would absolutely love to see a bill like this pass. It's sad to see this bill be delayed as much as it has been, but this is actually a good bill, and it's shocking to see a couple Democrats on it, but I'd love to see this one get pushed through.
Yeah, and sometimes it's interesting in these fiscal notes when they give you some background. So it says there are currently 424 sales room licenses that would be eligible to apply for expanded sales room permits. They think 80% of them will. So 339 businesses will now have expanded licenses to sell a little bit more, bring in more revenue, and like you said, Michael, maybe make the difference in terms of them staying afloat or not. So it's a minor increase, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. I think Colorado is long overdue for increasing or liberalizing, I guess is the right way to say it, expanding the freedom around alcohol here in Colorado. This one just want to bring up briefly because this is going to be a very interesting committee hearing for these three bills. Conversational artificial intelligence service operator requirements. My goodness. So, of course, there's so much talk about AI. We do have John Carson, who's generally a good Republican on this bill. Interesting bill here. Let's go ahead and jump into the fiscal note to read the summary here as well. So, no fiscal impact, really, but if this bill passes beginning on January 1st, 2027, the bill establishes requirements for operators of conversational AI services related to minor users, consumer disclosures, suicide protocols, false representation, and annual reporting. The bill requires operators to perform certain actions related to minor users. Specifically, an operator must persistently, repeatedly, and responsibly disclose that a minor user is interacting with AI, not incentivize minor users to increase engagement, implement measures to prevent the generation of communication of sexually explicit content, implement measures to prevent the generation of communication of emotional dependence between an AI service and minor users. Gosh, protect a minor user's privacy and data, offer privacy and account management tools to minor users and their parents. It also requires the operators of AI to repeatedly and responsibly disclose that a user, so any user, is interacting with AI, implement a protocol for user prompts regarding suicidal ideation or self harm that refers a user to a crisis service provider, submit an annual report to the Department of Law that contains specific information which the department must publish on its website. Operators are also prohibited from advertising or representing an AI service as a licensed healthcare, legal, accounting, or financial professional. The bill makes a violation of these provisions a deceptive trade practice and subject to a civil penalty of $1,000. So, interesting bill. Of course, there's a lot of concerns about AI, but is this really the proper role of government? Is this really what they should be doing in terms of trying to protect people and kids from dangerous AI? I don't know. This is so reactionary, I feel like. And if individuals don't understand what's actually happening by using these platforms, I don't think this bill is going to necessarily protect them. If people are going to make bad decisions, they're going to make bad decisions. I don't think it's the proper role of government. I think it's government interference into the economy, into these computer companies, into AI companies. And now you have AI companies that are like, oh, yeah, we're a nationwide company, but Colorado, just like California and other places, has very specific rules we have to follow. So we have to just do it differently for them, and if not, we're going to be penalized. So I think it's a bad bill overall, not the proper role of government. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Can you pop up page 2 of the fiscal note? Because I know some of that stuff that you read. I'm pretty concerned about. One, can you go back down to the second half, additional provisions? Perfect, thank you. I'm concerned about one thing. One, this bill is going to have to frequently tell minors and remind minors that they're talking with AI. Okay. I'm concerned about that because how are they going to verify that a minor is a minor? I mean, yes, they could possibly ask the question, "Are you 18 years old or older?" And they might very well lie. So there is not going to be really any way to punish or enforce that in a verifiable way uh, that's going to be effective, which which makes me concerned that they're going to use this as another excuse to try to verify people's ID and try to force some sort of state issued state license for using the internet, et cetera, like we've seen before. For example, Nikki Haley ran on that during the 2024 presidential campaign on a statewide level. We've seen similar bills introduced in the Colorado legislature before. Can you go back down and then point two under additional provisions? I think, sorry, point three. This is my biggest concern right here. Submit an annual report to the Department of Law that contains specific information which the department must publish on its website. So I'm concerned that this is going to turn into uh, a snitch line. We might see, and it's going to infringe on our Fourth Amendment rights and our particular with our privacy rights. So I could definitely see this turning into another issue as well, similar to Senate Bill 86, and this laying some of the groundwork for that bill.
Yeah, for sure. Just to jump into the bill real quick for people if they're interested here, you can see the annual reporting. So, they'll have to basically, if an operator knows or has reasonable certainty that a user of a conversational AI intelligence service is a minor. So I don't know, what do you do? And you're going to get online and it's like maybe like some like Walmart.com and their AI system. Is it going to be like, are you over 18 or not? Yes or no? That's basically what it's going to be. And then, yeah, they're just going to be telling everybody every 3 hours that you're dealing with an AI. Don't get me wrong, like I get people can get in a bad position, but ultimately at the same time, this is going to be one of those things where it's just creating so much extra work for these companies that it makes it difficult for them to be able to operate, I would say, here in Colorado. So annual reporting. They have to annually report to the Attorney General's office the number of times the operator has issued a crisis service provider referral notification in the preceding calendar year, any protocols the operator implemented to detect, remove, and respond to instances of self-harm by user of a conversational artificial intelligence service, any protocols the operator implemented to prevent a conversational AI service response about self-harm, and then must not include any identifiers or personal information there, Michael, that you had kind of brought up there. But then the attorney general will post that report basically. So it's going to say, yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how this works and how it operates. But I just don't like this idea. I think the state government, they've already made mistakes of trying to regulate AI platforms and they're having to unwind all of that. We had Jared Polis this last week, I believe, make his big announcement that the state legislature has their bill to reverse the damage of a previous AI bill. And it's like, yeah. So maybe we'll see what happens with this bill. I mean, it could be vetoed by Polis. We could see what happens, but definitely want to get this people's attention because AI is such a huge issue. Any bill that comes up around AI, I think, is worth at least looking at, right, and being aware of. House Bill 1261 in the same committee here, motor vehicle consumer protections. I work in this industry, so I have a bias, but I'm really concerned that this is a bad bill that's going to hurt RV dealerships, like I'm familiar with, but also car dealerships, boat dealerships, anybody else as well. And I get it. People are like, yeah, I love the idea of a right to return. Colorado really doesn't have like this lemon law. This basically expands that and says anybody can return a vehicle within 3 days. And there's a lot of problems with that. It's going to slow down business. It's going to cost money to our dealerships here in Colorado and make them less competitive against dealerships in other parts of the country. And I can tell you right now, people will travel as far as they need to get a good deal. And so you're putting Colorado dealerships at a disadvantage here. And of course, makes it harder or makes it longer for repossession from 20 days to 60 days. And it's like, my goodness, if you are defaulting on a loan, now it's instead of less than a month, now it's 2 months. And then, I mean, you're just making it harder and harder to get that product back from repossession. So, bad news, folks. I'm sure that a lot of the auto industry people there will be speaking against this bill. Very interested to see. Of course, they're increasing fees to cover the costs. Colorado has about 4,100 auto dealer licenses. So, everybody's going to have to pay more by $54. Wow. I mean, that's going to go up quite a bit, especially if you're talking about individual sales license, but even the dealerships themselves. So bad news, folks. I know a lot of people maybe aren't as concerned about this one, but it will definitely make a life more difficult for people running dealerships. It's a bad, as just as we've seen so often. It's going after employers, it's going after companies, going after businesses, and I can only imagine a small mom and pop type of car dealership that's now going to have all these extra requirements, and it's going to be so much more difficult for them to operate. They can't get their car back after nobody's been paying on it. They got to wait even longer. They have to get it returned, and it's just going to add all this extra heartache and headaches for people in this industry. So I just wanted to bring it up. Uh, but yeah, bad bill. Any thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I think this bill is going to be have a lot of negative effects. I think this bill is going to be a driver to higher prices in Colorado because it's dictating what people can and can't do. With their um not specifically people, I should say. It's going to dictate how businesses can recover their vehicles. We, for a few years, have been in a little bit of a difficult state when it comes to making car payments, and this is on a national level. I think a third of the country, uh, I think it's about a third of the country, if I remember correctly, is at least 30 days behind on at least one car payment. So we have a lot of issues in the United States right now when it comes to being able to afford vehicles. Something like this is going to reduce the supply of existing vehicles on car lots. It's going to make it so that way it's more expensive to even buy a car in the first place because of all of the additional hassle that it's going to cause these dealerships, whether it's RVs, whether it's auto dealerships as well. And then you can see here the bill creates a right to return a qualified motor vehicle purchased from a dealer within 3 business days. For cases in which consumers return a motor vehicle, the bill creates certain requirements for consumers and the dealer. Procedures are set for unwinding the financial agreement and any security agreement. Here's the other thing about this. There are certain dealerships in Colorado. I could think Carfax, or excuse not Carfax, CarMax, a few other dealers where they do automatically give you as a part of the deal with that specific dealership. If you want to purchase the vehicle, they might throw in a free return in. It might be 7 days, it might be 5 days, etc. Some of those industries, some of those companies might say, "Oh, the state says 3 days. I'm actually going to reduce this back down to 3 days because I'm going to meet the industry standard now. I'm only going to go 3 days, and if you don't hit your 3 days, too bad, so sad." So this might actually hurt certain innovation within the industry because there are certain dealerships that say we'll go ahead and take that risk on just because we might be a bigger dealership there where we can handle certain risk that other dealerships might not be able to. So this could actually I could see this potentially harming the industry in a negative way from a consumer perspective, even because that's what happens a lot of times with a lot of big government regulation is certain things that the industry might have been able to take on at one point no longer can. So that's something to consider with bills like this too.
Yeah, definitely. And so somebody who, has a right to return a motor vehicle to a dealer within 3 business days after the latter, the consumer receiving delivery of the motor vehicle, right? So then if they return it, the dealer within 3 business days have to refund the amount actually paid by the consumer for the returned vehicle minus the fees described in this section, and any cost of repairing the returned vehicle is described in the subsection. So now all of a sudden now the dealership has to go back through the vehicle. They have to pay somebody to do this inspection, to go through and check it out. If they miss something and all of a sudden this vehicle was off the lot for 3 days, had a major issue that wasn't noticeable at first, and then good luck. The dealership's now going to have to just absorb that cost. So you're 100% right, Michael. This is going to increase costs. It's going to make it more difficult to do business here in Colorado. And then, of course, you have to unwind, cancel the financing, leasing agreements, all of that, and then get their trade-in back in substantially the same conditions. So that all of a sudden you get a trade-in, you can't sell it the same day or the next day. You got to wait 3 days. So it's just slowing everything down, which of course costs money for businesses here. And yeah, you got to pay them back the for the trade-in value. And then, of course, there's so much to it. Won't bore people with the details here, but this is very concerning for sure for people because how are you going to define what a reasonable restocking fee is and reasonable excess mileage? So yeah. 1/2 of 1% of the value of the qualified motor vehicle at the point of sale is the reasonable cost. So somebody could take it. Maybe it gets messed up. Who knows? But yeah, bad news, folks. Bad stuff. It'll be very interesting to listen to this community hearing on Thursday, March 26th. But just wanted to bring these three bills up. And the business community is so interesting, folks, because they make so many decisions that affect thousands of people, employees, and employers, and all across the state of Colorado. And yeah, it's like these people oftentimes have no clue what they're even voting on. So bad news there. And then the last bill of the week, folks, we want to talk about is also on Thursday, March 26th. Now, things can change throughout the week, so make sure you follow Free State Colorado on X, especially. I'll try and keep you updated there. But this is the big data center bill. Of course, there's all these, this is the biggest concern for everybody all of a sudden about data centers. And they're like, oh my gosh, data centers this, data centers that. So I don't know. I think Polis could potentially, unless he's okay with this one, could veto it because there's all these data center bills, and there's make sure you follow Jake Fogelman over at Independence Institute because he does a lot of good research on this. The same with Nash Herman on some different things, but um, ultimately, let's just read the very brief summary here. It creates the Colorado Data Center Development Authority and the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. The bill specifies the membership, appoint authority, and the length of term for each member. Okay, authority members serve without compensation. Administers the Data Center Development Incentive Program. Its associated cash fund may issue sales tax exemption certificates to qualifying data centers. Must provide staffing, administrative, and operational support for the authority. Beginning in tax year 2027, the bill creates a state sales and use tax exemption administered by the authority for certified data center projects. The exemption is equal to 100% of expenses related to information technology infrastructure, data center infrastructure, mechanical systems, and other qualified purchases for the data center. So, on its face, this is a bill that's going to help out data centers. The exemption for certified data center projects is valid for 20 years. So, 20-year tax exemption. Data centers may apply for an extension of the sales tax exemption. So, they're trying to bring data centers into Colorado with this bill. They must inform the Department of Revenue the names of the data center approved from the state sales tax exemption. And this is ultimately, folks, how the state picks winners and losers, right? Because they say, hey, listen, we're going to give you this certain business handouts. We like this business. We're going to give that. They don't have to pay the taxes. Other people have to pay even more taxes, right? So, you can see where this kind of things can go wrong. And then, of course, the authority may collect the fees from data center operators for administrative costs. They're depositing the Data Center Development Incentive Program cash fund. Application fees, so to apply for this, cannot exceed $30,000 if approved. A fee for the sales tax exemption certification cannot exceed $20,000. So they're going to be getting some of this money and then try and use it to get certain data centers here. And of course, they have all these requirements where the state's going to say, okay, we only want certain data centers here. We only want certain people to come in here based on all of these different restrictions and requirements. But it's just a little government meddling in the economy. And of course, there's all this different things they have to adhere to with the Department of Natural Resources, water stewardship, this and that. So it's like, okay, yeah, listen, if we want to get so the idea is, the state legislature is going to say, okay, we're going to get data centers here no matter what. We'll try and incentivize by giving them tax breaks to the data centers we want, who are going to follow all of these rules that we push. But ultimately, this creates distortions in the market, and yeah, basically could be bad news. Ultimately, I would say. I mean, they're copying Illinois here in 2019, which is interesting. um, so, not the proper role of government whatsoever, not supposed to be picking winners and losers. And then, so much of this stuff becomes mandatory, and it just becomes these big government leviathans where all this money is being funneled to certain politically connected data center people, and no money, and then other people get pushed out of the market, right? Data centers that aren't qualifying for this because they do things differently than what the state government wants them to won't receive these exemptions and probably won't come to Colorado. And so you're just totally rigging the market. But that's my thoughts on it. What do you think about this one, Michael?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up. This is crony as all get out, man. I can't stand this bill. I can't stand bills like this. I hate the philosophy behind bills like this. Instead of just making it easier for companies to exist, while granted, we have too many data centers in our country, data centers definitely a problem. A bill like this is not the right way to go about creating special carve outs. We should not be creating special carve outs like this bill for certain companies. What we need to be doing is pulling back a lot of the regulations that we have on businesses. We shouldn't be making special carve outs, especially for the companies that they're going to bring in. Because I mean, look at, for example, $250 million investment requirements is going to be absolute asinine. A lot of the bills a lot of the companies that are pushing that they're going to be incentivizing with this are some of the worst companies out in the world. They're going to be doing a lot of things to strip our privacy uh, um, and working with the government to do this and then sharing a lot of that information with the government. So they're going to be doing a lot of nefarious stuff with this bill. I mean, this is the seeds for this bill is the seed for a lot of nefarious things that will happen in Colorado at a later date. And we need to be concerned about what they're going to be doing with these data centers. So I definitely am concerned about this bill. If we could kill this bill, I think that'd be absolutely fantastic. I'm very curious who's going to support this bill, and this is another. I think this would be a fantastic bill to uh, look up the lobbyists, do a lobbyist search on to figure out who is supporting this bill, who's supporting the measure.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff, folks. And if this is an area, and part of the reason we do these live streams is just to let you know what's going on. So whether you like this bill or you don't, maybe you hate the idea of data centers existing at all or whatever, hey, tune into this committee hearing on Thursday in the House and Energy and Environment, or maybe you support technology companies, whatever it is. Get in there, listen to it, find out more information, and you can become an expert in this field of public policy related to data centers just by even listening to this committee hearing and watching it online. So that's part of the reason we do these live streams is just to give you an give you information so you can be an informed leader in your community and fight for liberty and freedom and ultimately see what's happening. But that's what we got this week, folks. Lots of interesting bills being heard. It did take us, gosh, nearly an hour and a half to get through all the bills being heard this week. So much happening. But we're going to go through a little quick lightning round here and wrap it up tonight on some of the bills we've been tracking. So, folks, these are some of the biggest bills going through the legislature this year. So bills that aren't being heard this coming week, but we just want to give you an update of bills that have failed, bills that have now scheduled for the future committee hearings, and bills that maybe have already passed and are on their way to the governor's desk. So that's this little part here. You ready, Michael, for our lightning round?
Absolutely. Let's get into it, Bran.
All right, perfect. I'll go first here. So House Bill 1037, great bill. The Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act still has no date. Really curious of when this is going to come back to House Judiciary. We really want to see this bill pass. No update as of tonight.
House Bill 1048, back to school sales tax holiday. Good bill, no date, unfortunately. Refer to the House. Excuse me, it passed the House Committee on Finance and referred amended to appropriations.
Senate Bill 22 challenges meeting the 2030 emissions reduction goals. We need people to start pushing back against these ridiculous energy mandates. So this is a good bill, good step in that direction. No date as of yet.
House Bill 1138, Retail Theft Prevention Program. We talked about this one a little bit ago, to be heard on the 24th in House Judiciary upon adjournment.
House Bill 1140, the local government impact hearings, is on the calendar to be heard this week on the House floor. It did pass out of its committee. This is a good bill that allows more local government input into statewide legislative process. So, good bill. We'll see when it's heard this week. They usually don't do seconds on Monday. General orders, mostly special orders, or third reading. But we'll see. They'll get to this probably sometime this week.
House Bill 1253, disconnection from statutory municipality, no date as of yet, but it was introduced in the Senate and assigned to the Local Government and Housing Committee.
House Bill 1250, the Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform Bill, great bill from Representative DeGraff, is on the calendar for Tuesday, March 31st in the House Judiciary Committee. We definitely need more information on that one. We'll be talking about it a lot more next week, but good bill to reform this egregious process of civil asset forfeiture in Colorado. So we'll keep you updated on that one for sure next week, March 31st.
House Bill 1246, consumer regulated electric utilities by the one and only Ken DeGraff, no date as of today.
House Bill 1212 from Representative Flannel and Barone. Constitutional carry of a handgun is on the calendar for April 7th in House Judiciary. Good bill. Would love to see people show up to testify in support of that one.
House Senate Bill 108, transparency of legislative groups' money, no date as of today.
House Bill or Senate Bill 91, exclusion of newspaper deliverers as employees. Good bill. No date as of yet.
Senate Bill 90, exempt critical infrastructure from right to repair, no date as of yet.
House Bill 1190, the alcohol beverage manufacturer sales. Oh, we did cover that one being heard this Thursday. And then those were the good bills. If there's more that we missed, folks, let us know. We're going to go through some of the bad bills we've been tracking all year as well.
Unfortunately, and this was a great bill that turned into a bad bill. 1033, expanding the Colorado Cottage Foods Act, also known as the Tamale Act, no date as of today, and it's currently sitting in appropriations.
Senate Bill 5, the rights violation and immigration enforcement remedy, did pass the Senate, going into the House. No date scheduled yet.
Senate Bill 116, property tax modifications. We talked about this one a little bit ago, to be heard on Tuesday in Senate Finance.
House Bill 1276 protects safety of individuals who are immigrants. It did pass out of the House Judiciary Committee this last week and is going to the Finance Committee, not scheduled yet on their calendar.
House Bill 1255, social media duty to report and search warrants. Terrible bill from Lisa Cutter, who supported the legalization of prostitution, to be heard tomorrow in second reading.
Senate Bill 4, expanding the list of petitioners for red flag gun confiscation, did pass the Senate and the House, is on its way to the governor's desk.
House Bill 1233, we talked about this one last week. Unfortunately, it passed the House Committee on Finance, referred amended to appropriations. No date as of today.
And same with 1222 and 1221. It's that package of three bills that's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars out of the economy and go to the government by closing all these quote unquote tax loopholes. It's kind of similar to 1289 we talked about earlier, but just to cover all those at once. No dates yet of when they're sitting in appropriations right now.
House Bill 1054, Protection for Worker Safety. This is a Colorado OSHA bill. We don't need OSHA. Let alone this bill here. Unfortunately, it passed the House Committee on Business Affairs and Labor and referred amended to appropriations.
House Bill 1043, the Transportation Network Company, so your rideshare company's discriminatory practices, unfortunately did pass out of committee, Finance, House Committee, and is going to appropriations. No date yet.
House Bill 1011 transfers of certain pet animals. This is the anti-pet store bill to be heard in the Senate State Veteran Affairs, Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. So this one's already passed all the way through the House and onto the Senate.
Senate Bill 32, promoting immunization access. This is that bad bill there. Did pass the Senate and the House, is on its way to the governor.
Senate Bill 1001, housing developments on qualifying properties. This is passed the House and Senate and it's on to the governor.
House Bill 1148, protections for youth on social media. So this one did have its witness and committee discussion hearing on the 18th, and then is going to be voted on at a later date. I think they have an amendment for it that they want to change, but yes, no date as of yet for this bill's actual vote in the House Judiciary Committee.
House Bill 1144. This will be unfortunately heard in second reading on Tuesday, March 24th. Terrible bill by the one and only Tom Sullivan. Uh, Absolutely insane 3D anti 3D printing bill, anti First Amendment bill as well, because they're trying to actively ban you from sharing data, which is no different than banning books.
Bad bill, absolutely. Requirements for firearm dealers did pass the House. It's on its way to the Senate now. So anybody who has an FFL, please show up, testify in this one. Reach out to the senators right now. 1126, bad bill.
House Bill 1113, modifications to elections. This will be heard on April 2nd in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. This one's already passed all the way through the House.
House Bill 1114 allowed minimum lot size for subject jurisdictions, overriding local control for housing decisions. Passed the House, onto the Senate. No date yet.
House Bill 1210 prohibits surveillance, price, and wage setting. This is another wage control bill. Price control and wage control bill. Unfortunately, this will be heard tomorrow in the House on second reading.
House Bill 1207, disclosure of the demographic workforce data, did pass the House, onto the Senate.
Senate Bill 42, Revenue Classification Taxpayer Bill of Rights, another attack on Tabor. Passed Senate Committee on Finance, referred amended to appropriations.
Senate Bill 131, the sports betting protections. This bill is very interesting. If you're in the sports betting industry or have a passion for it, definitely pay attention to this one. Go back and listen to that committee hearing. It did pass in the Finance Committee on a very narrow vote, as we mentioned at the very beginning of the live stream, and is in appropriations currently.
House Bill 261055, My Colorado Card Pilot Program. This has passed the Committee on Education, referred amended to appropriations.
Senate Bill 135, the getting rid of our Tabor refunds forever for school, most of it to go to school funding, did pass to the Senate Committee on Finance, is in appropriations currently.
House Bill 1065, Transit and Housing Investment Zones, has passed the House Committee on Finance, referred amended to appropriations.
And then that's what we got. What we're tracking, folks. So we got the leprechaun from last week, but bills that are gone but not forgotten. So failed bills that have failed this year so far. We have House Bill 1275, latest addition to this list. The law enforcement identification and immigration training requirements did narrowly fail in the committee there. Very interesting to see that happen.
1271 and alcohol impact and recovery enterprises thankfully failed.
Protections against child rape, Senate Bill 111, unfortunately did fail. That was a good bill, but didn't make it out of committee. The Democrats killed that one, as we talked about at the very beginning.
House Bill 1211, regulation of broadband services, was thankfully killed. A terrible story in Mabry bill.
Senate Bill 97, the decriminalized prostitution bill, of course, did fail.
Senate Bill 107, modify the Colorado Open Records Act, thankfully failed.
House Bill 1125, parent penalties, minor using electric bicycle, failed as well.
House Bill 1012, consumer protections to promote fair market pricing, thankfully failed.
Senate Bill 86, the good bill this year to reduce cigar taxes, did fail.
Senate Bill 106, opt out of mail ballot packets for elections. A fantastic bill from Senators Maura Wilson failed.
Senate Bill 1072, the right of firearm possession, elimination of extreme risk protection orders, unfortunately failed.
House Bill 1108, Colorado Bureau of Investigation Access Federal Fingerprint Search Service. We talked about Hartsook earlier. This is another terrible uh, gun bill that was killed uh, and thankfully failed.
House Bill 1085, for pregnant women, the do not abort form did fail from Kelty.
Senate Bill 28, removal of wind energy from state energy goals, unfortunately failed.
1021, the Second Amendment Protection Act, of course, failed. No surprise there.
House Bill 1149, Legislative Committee testimony required oath, thankfully failed. We're afraid this one's going to come back next year, though.
The Peace Act here, the Parental Equality and Child Empowerment Act, did fail, unfortunately, as well, from Linda Zamora Wilson, who's been phenomenal.
1082, Children Are Not for Sale Act from the one and only Scott Bottoms, unfortunately failed.
Thankfully, we'll be able to vote for this on the election this year. Prohibit use of personal identifying feature, mostly a good bill, also failed. House Bill 1049.
1074, 90-day legislative session, one of Weinberg's bills, unfortunately failed. Another good bill.
Another good one he had was to limit the bills introduced by legislators to only three instead of five. House Bill 1073, of course, was postponed indefinitely in committee as well.
1062, expand deduction for retirement benefits, a good Rep Weinberg bill that was killed by Bob Marshall, and that's a good thing for everybody to remember during the general election. This one was unfortunately killed.
1036, the local taxes on vacant residential property from Tatone did fail, thankfully.
1129, gas utility service was unfortunately killed.
Register and drive surplus military vehicles, second year in a row that Rep. Brone had brought this bill forward. Unfortunately, did not make it this year either.
1087, safeguard minors from sex altering interventions. This was unfortunately killed. Good Scott Bottoms bill.
Yeah, and thankfully, Colorado voters will vote on this one as well. Repeal the retail delivery fee from WOOG did fail, unfortunately.
1128, limitation on gender transition procedure claims. This was a bill I referenced earlier, brought by Rep. Ken DeGraff. It unfortunately failed.
And then House Bill 1105, discuss adoption with pregnant women, did fail as well.
1083, Protect Female Sports Act, another bill brought by Scott Bottoms, which we will be able to vote on as a ballot measure in 26. This unfortunately failed.
1029, temporarily decrease statutory property tax revenue limits from Representative Sukla, failed as well.
House Bill 1137, requirements for campaign consultants, failed.
And that's what we got there, folks. That is what we got. It has been a crazy legislative session so far this year. We're going to be back with guests. with a lot more going on as we continue through the process. We're halfway through the legislative session, folks. So really appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, you can stay informed, get involved, have a voice, and let's have an impact and keep track, keep records of everybody who vote and how they vote this legislative session, so that way we can use that for or against them in this coming election. That's so important, and be informed about what's happening in our state government. So, Michael, really appreciate you tonight. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to get back and have some guests join us in the coming weeks here.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these guests. I know I'm very curious what we're going to see at the Capitol. This is the time when we start seeing a little bit more tricks. I mean, we're going to see it amp up in a month or so because there's a lot of bills that the Democrats are going to try to pass. Unfortunately, we saw the Democrats Rule 14, all the gun bills on Thursday, limiting debate to only 3 hours. So, very, very concerned about what's going to happen over the next few months. But as you said, Brandon, keep track, keep records, and make these people pay for what they're doing to Colorado in 2026 at the ballot box.
Definitely. We will be free one day, folks. Keep your head up. And I think it's so encouraging to see how many of these bills are passing with only one or two votes or just a couple of votes here and there. So, this election, don't have to flip every seat in the state to have an impact. So just remember that. Focus locally, get involved. Please get involved, have a voice, know what's going on, and be a leader. We need more leaders in our communities fighting for liberty and freedom. If we have that, we will win. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Michael, as always. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you next week, folks.
Appreciate everybody.